All right. So am I on the screen or we just, because I see that there we go.
Oh,
Hello.
okay,
There.
okay.
Okay.
It's we're getting there.
Welcome, everyone. We are just welcoming everybody who's coming through the Zoom door right now for our peace event. And we're so glad that you're here. We're going to give everybody just about a minute more. We've got Rock on the back end doing all of the tech.
Yeah.
So he's helping get everybody in. We've got Phil Shinners here. And I'm Stacey Robbins, who was playing around with glitter and mascara today because I've seen too many Instagram videos on how to do it. So I thought, why not try? So I think I'm going to have glitter in my home for the next 25 years at least.
That's the thing about glitter. It's quite a commitment. Like once you start, it gets everywhere.
That's a great way to say it. It's a commitment. Yes.
It's gonna be with you for a few days at this point.
Yeah, days. We'll be lucky. I mean, it's like after a couple of minutes, I find it on Rocky's eyebrows and it's in Seth's hair. And no
I
one
get volunteered for glitter. Not my jam, by the way.
All right. Welcome, everyone. It is a pleasure to be with all of you for the sake of a really important conversation. And we're going to be talking about peace. We are here tonight on behalf of Common Ground, which is a nonprofit organization. We're going to tell you a little bit more about that after. And Phil and I will introduce ourselves more a little bit after. But first, I want to say welcome. We're glad you're here. All right, so I wanted to get started. I'm Stacey Robbins, and like I said, Phil and I will introduce ourselves a little bit more. I'm the founder of Common Ground, and I am excited to co-host this experience with Phil, who is our spiritual director on Common Ground. And one of the things that I do, whether it's with my clients or any gathering that I do, I start off with intentions. And intentions are sort of like that Babe Ruth moment where you're pointing in the direction where you want to hit the ball of your life or of a conversation or of a meeting. And you have a great chance at hitting that ball in the direction that you pointed. So that's what I think of Babe Ruth. You know, he was famous for pointing and then hitting the ball where he pointed to. So we're going to have a time right now of setting our intentions of what do we want out of this time together. And in stating that, it's like us being clear about where we want to go and what result we want to have. So I'll set my intention, Phil will set his intention, and then you guys will have an opportunity to do that on paper or just do that in your mind. Or if you want to, you can add it to the chat below what your intention is. So I'll start off, and you don't have to be flowery, or it doesn't have to be big words. It's really just a focused thought. So my intention for our time today is to be in a vibrant, honest conversation about some of the spiritual angst and some of ways we can access spiritual peace. And that by the time we leave our conversation today, you'll feel a sense of lightness and have some tools that will help you outside of this conversation to access peace in a greater way. That's my intention. What about you, Phil?
Nice. Yeah, I think for me, I've just noticed that life can be pretty hectic, pretty bumpy at times. And there's some things that I've learned and am learning, and by no means have mastered or figured out, but just things that I'm learning that I'm really excited to share with you on this gathering. And I just hope that, maybe you walk away with one or two things that are practical and helpful and insightful and help you experience peace in a new way.
That's beautiful. I know that. I love being in conversations with you, and I'm excited for our guest tonight to hear your thoughts. A lot of honesty and a lot of humor with you, and I appreciate that so much, along with the deep dives. Let's see.
Well, hopefully we'll get a little bit of everything throughout.
Yeah, we will. It'll be deep and light. It'll be just perfect. So a little bit of who we are as Common Ground. Common Ground is a nonprofit organization that Rock and I founded about 21 years ago. maybe a little bit longer, 22 years at this point. And what we've done the entire time that we've been functioning as a nonprofit is to meet people where they are in their spiritual and practical needs and make a healing difference in their lives. So we've done that in years past through music and books, speaking events. And currently the way we're doing things is in-person gatherings like a healing experience, which we hosted a few months ago, which was just a really special time of music and messages that were encouraging, uplifting, inspiring, and full of high mindsets and practical tools for people on the spiritual journey. We also do online gatherings like this, and this is a wonderful habit we're going to be creating on a regular basis of these online gatherings and spiritual conversations. We also have one-on-one spiritual direction that we offer to people, which we'll be sharing more about. And then there's going to be resources like our communications with you on the website, which is commonground.love, as well as our monthly newsletters, which are going to be starting in September. And they're going to be chock full of really good information about your practical health, your spiritual health, your relationship health, all of those things that you want to be in a healthier place and spiritually grounded. That's what we're going to be talking about. And so we're just excited about that. And then Phil, who are you?
Ooh,
Who are you?
I kind of was laughing to myself, which I do a lot of, just like, oh, I'm a real estate agent. And I just thought, maybe did I end up at the wrong Zoom meeting? Or is this about buying homes and interest rates?
Definitely not.
Yeah, so I live here in Orange County, California. Been here my whole life. I kind of have, I guess, two halves to my story so far. But I was a pastor here in Orange County at a few churches in the area, and did about a 20-year run, kind of in the pastoral ministry world, and then hit a certain point where it was time to make a big change, step out, take a risk, do something different. And it's been 4 or 5 years or so since that point. And that's kind of when I jumped into real estate. So that's kind of my day job. What I do during the day is help people buy and sell homes. But I noticed about myself, just even though my job and my vocation was no longer kind of in the spiritual ministry world, I just noticed that didn't go away for me. It just was something that continued on, interest in learning and reading, and also walking with people and listening and sharing and teaching. And so it looks very different for sure, but I'm really honored and happy to be still kind of in that spiritual space, walking with people. And so, yeah, glad you guys are with us for this. I'm excited to share with you. So that's a little bit about me. I don't know. I have a wife and kids. There's other things too, but
amazing wife, great kids. I love your family. I've known Phil and his wife Alicia and their family for it's close to, I don't know, 26 years, something like that. So it's really fun to grow up together. And
well, we crossed paths in a previous life as well, back in the church world in Orange County. So it was a while ago, but here we are.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of who I am as well. I've lived several lives where I was a professional musician, and then segued into doing church music as well as doing CDs and recordings, and those are the same things, CDs and projects and stage stuff. And I really love the spiritual quest. I love the deeper questions. And I went through my own transition where I kept my spirituality, but I changed the context of what I was doing, how I was doing my spirituality. And instead of doing it within the four walls of the church necessarily, I was doing it in my neighborhood and in my family and in just nature. You know, I sort of shifted the venue where I was living out my spirituality. And I love now what I do. I'm an author and I'm a health and mindset coach. I lead Italian retreats, And I also run Common Ground, which is our nonprofit that really just wants to generate great conversations on the spiritual and practical. So yeah, that's me. And I have a husband. We're celebrating our 33rd anniversary this Saturday. Rock and I've been together for a million skrillion years, and he's that cute guy in the corner running all the tech.
You're
And
together with the tech guy? What's happening? How did this happen?
I'm a lucky duck. And then we have 2 kids, 20 and 18, Caleb and Seth, and they are the joys of my life when they're not making me crazy. No, I'm kidding, kind of. So
I noticed we're like on the exact opposite paths, because I hope at the end of my life, I'll be a professional musician rock star like you were back at the beginning. So we're heading in different directions.
does that mean I'm going to end up as a real estate agent?
It's possible. Yeah.
Actually,
I
it's
want to
possible.
start working on it. Yeah. Start working
All
on
right.
your license.
Go ahead.
Let's talk a little bit too, before we dive in, talking about peace and cultivating peace. We have this like title, spirituality for people who aren't religious. And man, all of those words have so many meanings. So I thought maybe we could each take a second and just talk about, what does that mean? Spirituality for people who aren't religious. So for me, when I think of spirituality, what I currently mean by that is accessing and living from that place, that soul part of us. Like we kind of have our like default, our mind, our body, our mind that's doing its thing, but there's also like a deeper, truer part of us that I guess soul, like for me, soul is a good word for it. But so when I think of spirituality, I think of like accessing that deeper, truer place and trying to live life from that place. I've found that when you do that, I mean, peace would be one benefit, but I just feel like there's kind of a deeper, richer, more textured kind of place to live life from. So that's what I mean when I say spirituality, getting to that place. And for me, religion would be kind of people coming together and formalizing those spiritual processes, spiritual paths, spiritual practices. Like throughout human history, there's been groups that have gotten together and like organized and formalized, hey, this is how we do spirituality. And one thing I wanted to say is like, I definitely don't want the title. I want spirituality for people who aren't religious to feel very inviting, but
Right.
There's no part of it that's like religion is bad or anti-religious.
Right.
A big part of my journey was in that very formal, organized, corporate path, and it was very helpful to me in my own journey. But that's so when I think of religion, it's not like good or bad or like you should or shouldn't. It's just people seem to have get together and organize and formalize spiritual paths. So that's kind of like how where I'm coming from. What do you think? Like when the title spirituality for people who aren't religious, what's in there for you, Stacey?
Yeah, I like your way of talking about like that dimension to it. That is so much of it for me. I love the way Darren Hufford, the author of The Misunderstood God, talked about it. It's like being in the wild, so there's this aspect of like the spiritual journey that I have definitely done within the construct of a religious formula and format, and I've really benefited from those rituals and community and that established thing. And there's also just this path that I see almost like a thread that's woven through my life, that I collect these spiritual understandings or the invisible parts of me that are really significant. It's like the universe that you can't see because and it's like I see the physical and I live in the physical. There's also this invisible part of me that is, like you said, the soulful, the spiritual. It's the part of me that finds meaning in things, that finds understanding. in why I'm here and why I'm doing what I'm doing and how I can do it in the truest way that feels like the highest part of me. And I collect that information along the way. And so my spiritual journey feels like I'm like, what was that Guide to the Galaxy, where that character is just going and collecting these tools and these encounters that he needs in life. And so I see my spirituality as this gathering of information about life, love, and God and me. And it just helps make the physical reality a really meaningful and special experience. So
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. It's like, it just helps us to engage our own lives in like a deeper, more meaningful way. And whether you're currently actively involved in a religion or not, I would think we all are on the lookout for figuring out how to engage our own lives, like I said, in a deeper, brighter, more colorful sort of way. So yeah, very good. Well, we're gonna kind of move towards talking about peace. But before we do that, I thought, Stacey, let's take a moment and maybe each of us could share what is not having peace. What has that looked like in our lives? I'm sure each of you watching this, like if you think of like the opposite of peace, that what comes to mind for you? What areas of your life feel really unpeaceful? For me, I mentioned my work, and I love what I do. I love getting to help people in these. It feels like a very helping sort of profession, getting to help people with the buying and selling of homes. But one thing it is not is like a very consistent experience and very consistent pay. I mean, it's like, it's just highs and lows, and it's all over the place. And so for me, when I think of like the opposite of peace, I think of I can get pulled all over the place based on what's going on in my work life. I can get pulled way up and there's high highs, but I can also get pulled down into these low lows where there's insecurity, there's doubt, there's like, is this going to work? Am I going to be able to pay my bills? Some of that stuff bubbles up. So when I'm peaceful, I've noticed that in the midst of all these highs and lows, I can kind of like cruise in a more steady way. When I'm not like internally organized or prepared, I find myself getting pulled all over the place, up, down, left, right. And it can be a fairly unpleasant feeling, if you've experienced that sort of just that insecurity that can come from, wondering what's next. So yeah, that was the first thing that came to mind for me as far as like, what does not having peace feel like in my life right now? What about you, Stacey? What's, I know you're kind of a pro, you've got it all figured out, but just in case you don't, like, what does not peace look like for you?
Yeah, don't have it all figured out. I think that the times when I have had a formula in my mind that if I have this, if my weight reaches a certain number on the scale, or my bank account reaches a certain number, or if my kids act a certain way in the restaurant when they're 2 and 4 years old, or if we own a home, or we have a car with leather seats, or whatever it is, like whatever it is that is the formula of when my kids get through this stage, or when this part of the business takes off, like there's this idea that when this thing happens, then I'll have peace, and I think it was really good for me to realize that those formulas don't work, because then there's always going to be something that holds your peace dangling out in front of you, like some elusive thing. And I think it's in general that formula that doesn't work for me. And I kept hitting that wall for many years, like, oh, okay, but when I do this, okay, well, when we move here, okay, well, when we get settled. And that's just not life, because peace doesn't work in that formula. And I especially knew it when my kids would go through a hard time, when Caleb went through the bullying thing, and I was trying to work him through that. And I was just like, let's get you healed so that we can move forward. And it's like, no, that angst as a mom, like, are we going to go through this hard time? How long is it going to last? When are we going to be done? And it's kind of that holding your breath feeling, so until your kids are okay. That is when I experienced like more worry and less peace, and it really pushed my buttons.
I really relate to that, how peace is always around the next corner. Like, oh yeah, when I get there, then and I think that brings up an interesting point about peace, which is you kind of have two options as to where you're going to put your energy and where you're going to put your effort. You can either put your effort on external things, all the things out there are, making our kids, getting our kids to do the right thing, being really good at our job so that it's not, so that it works better, relationships. So some people put all their effort on external things, and to a degree that can be helpful, no doubt, but there are so many moments of life that teach us that we have such limitations when it comes to dealing with things external to us. Man, we think we've got it all buttoned down and dialed in, and then something happens, something changes, and then we're thrown back into it. The other option is, and this is like a lot of spiritual teachings and ancient writings talk about, work that we can do that's internal to us. Work, like, instead of going out to address the situation, going in to address the situation. And that as we do certain work on the inside, that begins to affect how we experience our life and how we experience all the ups and downs and left and right. So a lot of what we're going to share today, obviously, I don't know your exact life circumstances. I can't tell you oh, well, if you do this, this relationship will be better, or you'll be better at your job, because all of us have so many specifics and so many details. But my hunch is, by going in and working on your interior world, my belief is that absolutely will show up in how you experience your life and the peace you experience while things might continue to be out of your control. So the first, I don't know if you're taking notes. I don't know if you're a note taker, but
hey, Phil,
yeah.
before you jump in, I realized that I never asked everybody to set their intention. Can they take just a minute?
Oh, heck yeah.
Write down on a piece of paper.
This would be the perfect time to do that. So
perfect moment for you to set your intention of, what do you want to get out of our time tonight in the next hour? What are you looking for?
Yeah, take a moment to really think about, what has life felt like in the last week, month? Like, what areas, where are you needing peace? What are you looking for? I love it.
Yeah, could be something as simple as my intention is to experience peace in my relationship with my partner, or reconciliation with my child, or whatever it is that it is for you. Loving myself where I am in my health, or in my age, or my physical. It could be any of those things and more.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's keep thinking about that. If any of you are brave and want to pop something in the chat when we kind of come to the end, I'd love to circle back and see what you're thinking about. It'd be great.
Great. Thank you.
We'll kind of share a few thoughts that Stacey and I have worked up together. The first thought is a question: what lens are you looking at reality through? What lens are you looking at reality through? So obviously, we all are seeing like we all think we're seeing reality exactly the way it is. We think we're seeing things the way they are, but man, there comes a point in our growth and in our learning and our maturity that we realize, oh, we're not actually seeing things the way they really are. We're seeing things through a lens, through a worldview, through a story, through our beliefs. But we have a lens that's filtering and changing everything we're seeing and interpreting in a certain way. So while we could, I guess to me, step one would be just acknowledging and understanding that we all have a lens through which we see the world, and it absolutely affects the way we experience our lives. So just thinking about that, what are the beliefs that you have? What is that lens? What is it doing to the things you see? How is it helping you interpret the world? Some of us, I would say, have grown up in a system or in a worldview that says the world is bad or broken, or the world is run by darkness or evil, or the people that I meet are mostly bad, whatever. Like, some of us have grown up with this worldview, and I would just say this is showing up in our lives in some way. It's showing up in some way. So I think for me, it's been so helpful to like get at those beliefs, get at those lenses, and really question them. And honestly, in a lot of places, change them and replace them with something else. I want to share with you one question that I heard on a podcast a couple of weeks ago. And this is the question. I think it really gets at what I'm saying, which is life an adventure that we get to go on, or a trial that we have to endure? Is life an adventure that we get to go on, or a trial that we have to endure? How can some people experience similar things and take them in such different ways, such different directions? Well, if you have a lens, for example, that says, wow, life is an adventure and there's surprises and there's setbacks and it's like a movie and there's like this plot and things don't go perfectly as planned, they're all over the place, that's going to put you in quite a different place and help you experience your life quite differently than a worldview that says things are bad, life is hard, bad things are coming my way. This is a trial that I just have to try to endure and make it to the end. So that's just, to me, that question was, like I said, I heard it on a podcast and I thought it was such a helpful reminder that everything that's happening in your life, you are interpreting in a certain way. And it's worth questioning those things and looking at those things and digging them up. So Stace, what do you think? What do you hear? What do you think? Have you experienced anything like this? Yeah.
I like the question that you heard, and it makes me think of Wayne Dyer when he was doing his presentation for many years on the power of intention. And he told a story about, I can't remember, I think it was some guru who asked the question, if you see someone walking down the alley, and their hand is in their pocket, do you think they have a knife in there or a bouquet of flowers? Or it's something like that. And do you see life that way? Like, as life is coming towards you, do you see it holding good things for you or tragic things? And so I value that question. And it reminds me of those many years, decades that I studied humanism, where it really reminded you that you have a power to choose, and that philosophy, whether it's humanism or I think Piaget, who was a psychologist, talked about it. And then also in anthroposophy with Rudolf Steiner, said that we have 3 significant events that happen by the time we're like 8 or 9 years old. And they form this idea inside of us of this plus this plus this equals life. And when we come up with that formula, it helps us to feel safe. And then we bring that formula unconsciously forward, and then we generate life from that formula. But we just think it's life happening to us and not that we're happening to life. And I love the reminder that our beliefs, our ideas about our life really are the cause of so much of what we experience, if not all. I'm not going to say all because I don't know, but I know that it's significant. If you think that you're going to have a bad day, then likely you're going to fulfill that because you're a powerful source of your energy and you're going to empower that idea. And if you think, hey, there's magic waiting for me everywhere I go, you're likely going to encounter more magical goodness because you're the power source for that energy. So yeah.
What is that thing you said? You went on a trip recently and you said like, I'm open to magical experiences. What was that?
Yeah, I was just in England for 3 weeks on a healing adventure. And I would walk down the streets of these different towns and I just would say, Spirit, I welcome any kind of magical encounters that you have for me. And I had every day, a magical encounter. Yeah.
I love it. That's like, if we could all ask that question more, I just think, that's exactly it. It changes your posture and what you're seeing and what you're experiencing. So as you're thinking about peace, and I just would really encourage you to really consider, what is the lens? What are the lenses that you filter life through? And how is it either helping you or not helping you? And if not helping you, all of this stuff is subject to be adjusted and changed. And it's tricky work, but man, valuable work. Another thing that I've noticed, both in myself and others, and so as we're talking about trying to find more peace, one idea I have would be letting go of the need to label everything. I laugh sometimes with my wife, at my wife. I'm not sure which, but she picked up this awesome trait of like putting sticky notes on everything in our house. Like if you open the fridge in our house, you'll see like some food, but it's like, don't eat. This is for dinner on Tuesday. Oh, don't touch, these, whatever. Like there's just kind of notes on everything, which I enjoy giving her a hard time about. But it's kind of like what we do is like when we go through our lives, we love to just put little sticky notes, metaphorically, on everything, and we label everything. Oh, that's a good thing. But that is a bad thing. Oh, this is unfortunate that this happened. Or, oh, what a lucky turn of events. Look what happened here. Our mind, our ego loves to like put labels on everything to try to make sense of it and to try to give us, again, some sort of control. Like we've got everything in its place and we're in control. What I've been learning about lately, and just, again, something I'd encourage you and hope that it would be helpful to you, is like, what if we stopped feeling the need to label everything? Like, what if we set down the sticky notes and just engaged in our lives more? What if we just let everything be whatever it is without the need to call it good or bad or helpful or unhelpful? I think sometimes these labels, though they can help us like feel more in control and feel more comfortable, I think they serve to like separate us from our own lives in a way. And I have just found a lot of joy and freedom and peace in just letting the day be the day, like letting things happen the way they're happening. Just letting it be, letting reality be whatever it's going to be. And I don't know, it's been a helpful practice to me. What about you, Stace? Like, have you,
That's a big
what,
topic for me. This is a
yeah,
topic for me because I was raised in a really judgy Italian family in the Northeast. And it's like,
it's fun to judge things.
I just, we feasted on judgment and guilt. That was pretty much our emotional food. But, with all the other greatness that there was also that. And so I had to really go on a big journey about noticing judgment. And I agree with you that it's about control, that when we don't feel safe and like life feels like a unicycle, we want to put the handlebars of judgment on it. So we feel like we can direct things a little bit more. And what I came to, I called it the gift of judgment in one of my books that's coming out in the next 8 weeks. In the gift of judgment, it's really like being able to see, when somebody judges you and they're not like letting go of an idea they have about you, they're not really in a relationship with you. They're in a relationship with the idea of you. So when I think of like writing a label on a file folder, like when I'm kind of categorizing things and I label someone, oh, they're an idiot or they're a whatever, you know what I mean? Whatever I want to say about that person. What happens is every time I'm in front of that person, I'm not really in a conversation with them. I'm in a conversation with this file folder I have of ideas about that person. And so what it does is it keeps me safe, not just of knowing them, like I've figured you out and I'm right, and in being right feels safe. But not only that, I'm safe because I don't have to be in a trusting, vibrant relationship present to you. I don't have to risk you hurting me. If I judge you, I'm in a relationship with a file folder and that won't hurt me. But if I get present to you, maybe that won't feel so safe. Maybe I'll have to be vulnerable and risk loving you and risk being hurt by you. And I think that we do that a lot. And I saw in my life where I did that too. And noticing it is really the gift. Noticing when you're judging someone, when you say that person is all this or all that, it's maybe that we don't feel comfortable being vulnerable and present to them in that dynamic reality of right now.
I think reality also gives us these little gifts of like when you're dead wrong about a judgment you made, like we just have these little opportunities to like, oh yeah, maybe our filing system isn't as good as we thought it was. But I think it's like an invitation to, again, to like have a looser grip and just let things be what they are and try to enjoy them for what they are, without needing to control or organize. So I don't know, that's something that came to mind for me.
Love it. I think.
What about you? Like when you're thinking about peace, like what are a couple things that,
Let me jump into our third topic is really about and it seems like it's opposite of what your point was. Your last point was about letting go. Well, mine is about taking hold of your life. And it's not really a contradiction. It's really about understanding that we're in partnership with the things we want, with the results we want in life. It's if you want to grow a tomato plant, you're going to have to plant tomato seeds. Like the soil is there, and that's divinely made soil. Like I didn't make the soil, but I have to plant the seed of the intention of what I want to grow there. And if I want to have a baby, I've got to connect with my husband. Like there's this co-creation we're in with life. And if I want peace, that means I have to take peaceful actions, or actions that will result in peace. Like if I say, oh, I want a peaceful, non-dramatic life, but then I'm paying my bills late, or I'm drinking excessively, or I'm eating myself into a coma, or I'm, causing problems at every restaurant I go into and being horrible to the waitress, like I'm not going to have the result of peace. And it's not because God didn't do enough. It's because I didn't take my agency and my responsibility and my ownership to partner with the peace that I desire. So for me, I'm really a champion of responsibility. And I know that's not a really sexy word, but it really is important because it's about consciousness. It's about understanding that I'm a co-creator and I have a lot of power. And in that power, I call it two things. We can take active surrender, which is what you're talking about, letting go, where I choose to trust, I choose to let go, and I choose to be present. Like that's active surrender. And then I call it surrendered action. And that other part, the surrendered action, is about I do my part and I do the things that will bring about the results that I want to have in my life. So I think it's partnership. So that's what's valuable to me. And I think a lot of times people in my religious background, and even I was guilty of this too, I'd be like, oh, but I want this kind of life. Come on, God, bring me that kind of life, or bring me that kind of car. And then the kind of the name it and claim it, where you're not taking personal responsibility for working the job that would make the money that would bring in that vehicle or whatever. Like you're all in the invisible realm and you're not being responsible. Like I saw that happen. And then other times I've been overly responsible. I've been trying to like put more physical muscle into something and more physical elbow grease into something that just needed more trust and surrender. So my whole thing's about the partnership. What part is mine to do that, and then release what I can't control. So what about you? What do you think about taking hold of your life and that partnership thing?
What comes to mind when I hear you saying that is like this idea that I have had at parts of my life, and I think maybe is kind of a human thing, but like that someone else is going to come rescue us. That's what comes to my mind, is like I'm kind of in trouble, or this isn't working, but like God or another, like someone's going to come fix it for me and rescue me.
Right.
And gosh, it's I'm realizing, like you said, I'm just realizing how much power we actually have to shape our lives and not just wait for someone to come save the day.
Yeah. That whole John Wayne idea, or I don't know, what is it? Penelope, and the guy comes and she's tied to the tracks, and just rescue me. I don't want to live that way. So good. Yeah. Thank you for bringing up that whole victimhood thing, because we can kind of do spiritual bypass, I guess is that word, where we're expecting somebody else or something else to be more responsible than we are, for our lives. So it's about taking a right amount of responsibility that's commensurate with my power. So the next one is about loving ourselves. And I feel like as soon as I hear that, my brain goes, wah, wah, wah. Like, don't we all talk about that way too much? Loving ourselves. And I think the reason that we need to talk about loving ourselves as a pathway of a peaceful experience is because a lot of us don't realize that we're not being loving to ourselves. And in my work as a coach, and especially with women with Hashimoto's, but just even before that, 26 years ago when I started counseling people, I was able to see in my own life. And then, when people are sitting across from you, you get like to learn about yourselves a second time. It's not just your own journey. It's like, oh my gosh, someone's being honest about theirs, and you get to see yourself in their story. And I would see how I was disconnected from myself. And I work with a lot of women who have gone through past trauma, whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, whether there was neglect, an accident, an injury, something that had a profound traumatic impact. And if they weren't walked through a healing process of reconciliation to themselves, a lot of times we over-identify with the event. So it's like, okay, here's Stacey and here's what I went through. And if I conflate that and I over-identify with, I am that event, I am the trauma, I am the victim, I am whatever. What happens is when we co-join those two ideas, we actually separate ourselves from ourselves. We actually disconnect because we're forgetting who we are. Because here's who I am and here's what I went through. And this was an event and I'm an eternal being. So if I confuse myself with a temporary event, then I get locked into all those ideas that are of the temporal realm of, and the pain. And I lock my eternal self into that idea. And what happens is when you go through that kind of trauma and you're not healed through it, you separate from your heart, you separate from who you are, and you start living in your head. That's where all that judgmentalism to be safe comes in. It's like you start living in your head and you get really heady and you get really analytical and you get really critical, and you have this long to-do list of what people have to do in order for you to be okay. No, you got to talk to me this way and you got to say it that way and you got to approach me like this, but not like that. And you become this really rulesy person because it's safer to live here. It doesn't hurt so much to live here, but it hurts to live here when you don't feel connected to yourself. And so what happens, that's why I called myself an integrative health coach for a long time, integrative wellness coach for a long time, because I wanted to integrate us again. I wanted to get us just out of our heads where we felt safe and get us back into the body that wasn't able to run away when we were traumatized, that wasn't able to ask for help when we needed it. And I wanted to get back connected. Now, what does that have to do with love? Well, you don't really love something that you feel disconnected from. You don't really love, it's hard to love yourself when you're disconnected from the idea of who you are, how powerful and amazing and beautiful and strong and resilient and resourceful and wise you are. And so what I think is more peaceful is when we notice that, when we notice, hey, I'm not really being loving to myself. The remedy for that is to take loving actions, to speak kindly to myself, to say loving things, to do loving actions. A lot of times when you go through feeling unworthy and unlovely, you want to not shower, or you want to not exercise, or you want to eat crappy, comforting foods, But what if you did the loving thing, even if you didn't totally feel like it? And just, it's like when you're a mom and you've got your kids and they're hungry for breakfast and you're tired because you were up half the night, nursing the baby or whatever. You're still going to feed your kids breakfast because you love them and they need it. And so I feel like one of the ways back to a peaceful relationship with ourselves is to do the loving thing for us, because that's what we need. And that's what we can give to ourselves. So take yourself out on a walk, say something loving to yourself, give yourself a rest, give yourself a break. So that's an important part of peace for me. What do you think, Phil? What's your wisdom on loving yourself?
Well, I guess what's on my mind for that is just kind of being aware of the way so much is happening in our inner life, but the way we talk to ourselves, I think, can be really damaging and like I said, make things feel stressful, unpeaceful. One question I think has been helpful to me is are you talking to yourself the way you would talk to a deeply loved friend? Because we're generally just better at talking to others kindly, but then when it comes to talking to ourselves, we find a different tone or a different way. So I just think a good helpful question to me has been, is this the way you would talk to a deeply loved friend? And if it's not, then maybe it's not a loving way to talk. Maybe you should adjust your own kind of internal language. I don't know. That's kind of what's when I think of loving myself. Yeah, I mean, so a lot of the things that make life challenging and stressful come from the outside, but holy cow, so much of them come from right here, right on the inside. And the way we talk to ourselves seems to be a big one of those. So, yeah, just talk to yourself like you would talk to one of your dearly loved friends. I think it would change the way your day feels almost immediately. So, well, let me share I want to share one more thought, and then yes, I have my eye on the clock as well. But at the end, Stacey and I both want to share one or two very hopefully helpful, very specific practices, because a lot of this is just a little bit conceptual. That's fine. I hope you're like hearing what you need to hear, but we'll also share like each one or two practices that are helping us develop peace in our lives. The last kind of bullet point for me that I wanted to just give a little bit of time to is the idea that you are not your thoughts, which this is exactly what you're saying. Like there's a lot going on in here. Holy cow, like our mind never stops just delivering endless thoughts, some helpful, some not so helpful, some kind, some not kind, some useful, some, and they're always changing. I mean, the thoughts that are floating around in our head are always changing. What has been so helpful to me recently is becoming an observer of your thoughts. If this is like the first time you're hearing that, I mean, I imagine it sounds so strange, but there's a place where you can live in where the thoughts are still there. You haven't like cut off the thoughts. Your mind is doing its thing, but instead of identifying as the thought, you're like able to sink back a little deeper and observe the thoughts. And the difference between those two things, I have found to be really life-changing. If you are your thoughts, man, you're everywhere, all over the place. But if you can observe your thoughts, then you can work with them differently. Like, oh, I see you. I see that thought. Interesting. Yeah, where did that come from? I wonder what, and one of the books that I've read this year that I've loved is Byron Katie. She's an author. She has an awesome book out. I can't even think of the title of it right now, and that's fine.
Loving What Is.
Oh yeah, Loving What Is. Oh, such a good book. Please read it. But she has like these 4 questions that you can ask of any thought. But the reason I'm sharing all that is not to like go into the 4 questions, though that would be a blast. But it's just the first question is, when you have a thought, is asking, is it true? Is it true? And what I see in the power of that isn't even the answer, is it true or not true? It's realizing that when a thought comes in, there is actually a way to question it. Like you don't have to just assume, oh, that must be real. I had this thought, it must be true. No, you can actually like back away from it and ask the question, is it true? That little space between like being your thoughts or observing your thoughts, I think is beautiful. And I'm still learning so much about it and just like really finding a lot of peace there as well.
It is peaceful to be able to notice those thoughts. And for me, the way that I do is, the whole idea from the ancient scriptures is like, the truth will make you free. The truth will set you free. And I ask myself, is that thought making me feel free? And if it's not, then I have to ask myself, is it even true? Because it's not generating a lot of freedom for me. And freedom doesn't always mean comfortable. It's just like that bigger space that you're in to go, oh yeah. And that helps me. And the author, Michael Singer, wrote the book, The Untethered Soul. I think I remember mentioning it to you, and I think you loved it too, Phil. But he says right in the beginning that, we have these voices in our head, and sometimes it's like, it says negative things, and sometimes we try to counteract that with positive things. But it's the part of you that is saying, hey, that was a negative thought, say something positive. It's the part of you that is observing the conversation in your mind. That's the real you. That's the peaceful you. That's the untethered soul in you. And I love that idea, just to remember that if I'm observing a conversation in my head, the part of me that's observing it is the true me. I like that.
I love it. Well, let's kind of shift gears a little bit. Man, I hope that something that was shared is meeting you where you're at and is helpful. And we just kind of wanted to wind things down with some specific practices. So I'm going to share two. It's not going to be super long, but I just want to share like how am I cultivating this peace in my life? What does it look like? So the first thing that has been really helpful to me in this area is the idea of mantras, which is like a phrase, like picking an intentional phrase to like continually think over and over and letting it like take root in your mind and in your soul. Like I said, it's kind of interesting. Our minds are all over the place, but we actually have this ability to like plant certain thoughts, and then our mind, they can like create channels or create grooves, and then our mind, you'll find that your mind becomes happy to work with it and to live with it. And so I'm going to just share one of my mantras that I come back to regularly, and is in some of the things we've talked about will be in here. So almost every day I say this: life is a gift. I choose to participate, engage, enjoy, and give this day my full attention. Now, there's some of that stuff that's like personal, like that I can go on cruise control and kind of disengage. So this is like a reminder to me of like, no, stay present to my own life, stay engaged, give today everything I've got. And it's all a gift. So that's just a thought that I intentionally, like I said, put into my head every day. And it begins to like change the way I see things and the way I experience life. So maybe mantras is like a new topic to you, maybe not. There's only about 1 billion options for like thoughts you could put into your head, but that's one that's been really helpful to me. The other one is meditation. Meditation is another area that there's only a 1,000 different kinds of meditation. But what I'm in relation to this talk, what I mean by that is coming back to the awareness. So like when I'll take 5 or 10 minutes and sit down and just try to be very present and very aware in this moment, here and now. But then inevitably, if you sit alone in presence for any amount of time, eventually you'll realize like your mind has kind of hijacked the moment and like given you a fun thought. Like,
Totally. Always.
What are you doing? Why aren't you doing this? You should be doing something way more productive than this. Oh, look at that person. They have a funny shirt on. Oh, maybe we should, get some lunch now. We're starting to feel hungry. But in meditation, when I see the thoughts, I just try to simply come back to awareness. And it's actually, to me, it feels a little bit like working out a muscle. The thoughts come in, and then you eventually realize it, and you just bring it back to awareness. The thoughts come in, bring it back. But by doing that in like an intentional 5 or 10 minute daily moment, I've noticed that it helps me when I'm not doing meditation to see a thought, to observe it, to acknowledge it, but be able to like find my center apart from that thought. So it's just like it's like working out a muscle in your brain. Like thoughts keep coming, but I can like come back to awareness and presence. So those are two things that have been really helpful to me. Stacey, what about you? What are some practices that people might do this week that could help bring peace?
Probably the single most effective tool for me accessing peace inside of me is my stillness practice that I started about 18 years ago. And it is me lying down, setting my alarm on my phone for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is, and just lying down like I'm in surgery. Like when you go to the hospital and you have to check in for surgery, like you don't check in and then perform your own surgery. Like you go in, you check it, and then you lie down on the table, and then they knock you out, and that's when the surgery happens. And so for me, stillness is like me lying down and just closing my eyes and opening up my hands and saying, okay, this is my time to receive. All the goodness that's available to me, all the healing that needs to go wherever it needs to go, however it needs to go inside of me. This is me being available for that. Thank you to all the benevolent beings who are on my behalf. And then I just lie there and I take that spiritual surgery of stillness, and I get up differently every time. And then the second practice is my Taoist practice, which is my 100-day gong, which gong just means practice or work. It's this thing that you do every day for 100 days. And in the consistency of, let's say, meditating for 5 minutes for 100 days, right? Every day for 100 days, or meditating 15 minutes, or doing yoga for 30 minutes, or writing in the book you've said you always wanted to write but never have. Doing that consistent practice allows you to face the demons that have kept you from your dreams and kept you from your peace. And it allows you to keep pressing through because your commitment kind of keeps you going. And instead of you doing this, like, I want to do this, but I don't do this. I do it some days, but not every, it puts you in a consistent container of doing that thing every day. And then you get the results of that after 100 days. It's transformative to the mind. It helps the beginning of creating new neural pathways. And I've been doing that since 2013 or 2014. And that has also transformed my peace. And it's helped heal health issues and transform my relationships. And I've released books, and I've created Italian retreats. All these things have come from that practice.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, listen, we're really grateful that you would take some time to consider these ideas with us. We want to say a couple things here at the end, but we're going to kind of bring an end to the presentation, to the us talking part of it. But if you want to stay on after we conclude, we will take a look at some of the questions, and if you have any specific questions, we'll give a shot. We'd love to try to be a little more specific if there's something you want to dive into. But before we go, we did want to mention, please check out our commonground.love website. Rocky will put that up in the chat as well. And then we also have an email address. So if you want to hear about upcoming events, maybe you have an idea for a future online gathering like this, we'd love to hear what you'd want to hear about. And there's an online form there that will allow you to request certain things from us. But we'd love to stay connected. We'd love to stay engaged with you in this journey and in this process. So, Stacey, anything you want to say here towards the end?
Thank you, Rock. Thank you, Phil. And thank you to all of you who are joining us for this inaugural conversation on peace. Please go to that link. It'll give you an opportunity of commonground.love with the contact form. It'll give you an opportunity to say, yes, I would be interested in more of these gatherings. Yes, I'd like to know about your in-person gatherings or spiritual direction, or be on your newsletter list, your email list. So let's stay connected. And if you have any questions right now, we're going to officially close out and say thanks for being with us. And we're going to segue to the Q&A time. If you have any questions, put them in the chat and we will answer those now. Thank you so much.
I wanted to make a comment. Sorry, it's a little loud here, but the one, Phil, you were sharing that practice of talking to yourself in a way that if you were speaking to someone you dearly love. And it wasn't until we had kids that I really I would see them, and if you're a parent, likely you understand that, where you have just overwhelming love for them, and you're for them, and you're just like, how can I help you? It's all this unconditional intention for good. And then, I try to, oh, I'd like to turn that around to myself. And it's just, there's like this almost like an inner resistance. You're like, oh, whoa, wait, hold on. Yet I try to take that on, and I find that helpful, but I let's just say there's probably some stories there, some other conversations going on that affect my peace, relationship, that whole receiving. Like I can have those good things. I can look at myself like a big brother and like, dude, you need to be doing this. You can, So I found that really instructive.
Thanks for sharing that. I hope, like anytime we can catch ourselves with like oh wait, is that how I would talk to someone else? Like, no, then it's probably not how we should talk to ourselves. I told Stacey one of the tricks that I've had this last couple of years is like forcing yourself to start all of your inner dialogue with the word sweetheart, which I know maybe like referring to yourself as sweetheart might sound a little strange to you. I don't know. I've gotten pretty comfortable with the idea, but if you start anything you say to yourself, if you start with sweetheart, it's usually the next part's going to be kind as well, so it's like a good way to just trick yourself to like adjust that inner dialogue. So let's see if you can start all your thoughts to yourself, all your words to yourself with sweetheart.
I love that so much. Yeah, Rock, you're so good at that with me. Like where if you hear me saying something negative about myself, you've always said to me, would you ever say that to Caleb? And I'm like, no, never. And like, okay, well, why would you say that to you? And it's like, that's what I mean, that disconnect. It's so easy to disconnect from loving ourselves, from who we are, and that sense of protection of our spirit, of our mind, of our heart, where you would want to use those beautiful words, so. Well, I don't see any questions here, but
great. Let's do this again sometime.
That means we covered it all. No questions. We did
nailed
it.
All, right? We nailed it. Yeah.
Great job, Phil. And let's see, is there anything else we want to let people know? Oh, I almost didn't join. I had a few things happen today that put me in a grumpy, snitty mood. Snitty? Okay, snitty mood. And
hold on, is it shitty or snitty?
Stepped in. Yes, it's a Zoom about peace that could be useful. Thanks for helping me recenter. Oh, my friend. Thank you for sharing that.
Love it.
Thank you for sharing that. That's the real deal, right? And you're so powerful, turning yourself around, and thanks for letting us be part of that. You are that for me so often. So I love that we got to be that with you. Julia saying, loved it. A lot of takeaways. Oh, good. So glad, Julia. Glad you enjoyed it.
Well, and I know we, maybe not everyone feels comfortable jumping in on the live video, but if you think of something, there's that contact link. Feel free to click it if you're like, oh, it ends and you're like, oh yes, that one question I was dying to ask about peace. Feel free to drop that in there too, and we'll reach out to you as well.
All right. Good to see everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Keep an eye out for our next online gathering.
Thanks, Phil and Stacey. You guys are wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rob. Bye. Thanks, Phil.